Welcome, investigator. Evil is on the rise. Crime is escalating. Our mission is to eliminate the crime by exposing evil, examine why it manifests, and highlight the brave souls that confront it every day. Join us as we work together to bring justice to every victim. Welcome to All Things Crime. Here's your host, Jared Bradley.
So in the 1970s and 1980s, California was terrorized by a man who was called the East Area Rapist. He was also called the original Night Stalker, and eventually he earned the title of the Golden State Killer. Now, this guy ultimately was responsible for 13 murders, 51 rapes, and 120 burglaries. So he was he ran around for decades around there, and there were a lot of people that were hurt from him, and it was just a horrible time and an ordeal, and especially after some of them. Yeah, I mean, in some of the communities that he targeted, they were just nice, beautiful communities, but after he would strike, the numbers of locks and both for doors and windows would just fly off the shelves, and people actually started defending themselves in any way they could. But because the police couldn't catch him, he just had this reign of terror. So one of my guests today is amazing woman. I love her to death, and I'm so glad to have her on. Her name is Jane Carson-Sandler. So Jane, welcome to the show. And thank you so very much for being patient with me and coming on.
Thank you, Jared.
So, Jane, you are the author of this book. It's called, I'm going to hold it up here. It's called Frozen in Fear. Now, this book describes your ordeal, but I wanted to have you on and so that you can, kind of tell the audience what you went through. I think one of the best things, let's just have you introduce yourself and just kind of give a little bit of background and then maybe describe what happened to you.
Yes, I was 30 years old at the time in the Air Force Reserves out of Travis Air Force Base, a flight nurse. And I was married to a Air Force pilot living in, I think I said, Citrus Heights, California. And I was also at that time going to school at Cal State University to get my Bachelor of Science in nursing. So this was October 5th, 1976. And at that time, I was busy with my little 3-year-old and just household duties and my reserve work every other weekend. And it was, 6 o'clock, 6:30 in the morning when my husband would normally go to work. And at that hour, my little 3-year-old was in bed with me snuggling. So I heard the garage door close, and then a few minutes later, I heard someone running down the hall with a flashlight, and I yelled out my husband's name, and I said, who is that? Is that you?" And of course it wasn't. Why would he be running down the hall with a flashlight? And I looked up, and there was this man with a ski mask on and these black gloves. I know he had these high top black sneakers on, but anyway, he was holding a large butcher knife at the time. And of course, I didn't have any time to react. I just screamed, and he kept saying, shut up, or I'll kill you. And it was really like, shut up, or I'll kill you. And I thought, oh my gosh, and I said, take whatever you want, take my money. What do you want? What do you want? And at first I didn't have any idea what he wanted. And then he then went and tied us up, both of us, my 3-year-old included. He tied our wrist and our ankles. He blindfolded both of us, and he gagged both of us. And that was really very, very terrifying. And then what was even more terrifying is he stood by my dresser and went through all the drawers, but then he took sheets. I don't know where he got them from, but all I remember is he stood there tearing cloth. And I thought, Oh my God, what is this man going to do to us? Is he going to hang us? I had no idea because I didn't know anything about the Golden State or the East Area Rapist at that time. So I had no history. So then what was even scarier is when he took my son away from me. That's why, that's what it was all about. Fear, fear. So, and I had no idea where he put him. And then when he took him away from me, I thought, what's his next move? Where did he put him? Did he hurt him? So then, uh, then he untied my ankles, and I knew what he was there for at that point. So while he was raping me, I didn't even pay any attention to it. All I paid attention to is, where's my boy? Frozen in fear, frozen in fear. Where did you put him? Where's my son? And that was that was the worst experience of my life, is not knowing what he had done with my son. So afterwards, he did put him back on the bed. Then he went into the kitchen and I don't know, he opened the refrigerator. I heard pots and pans being rattled. And I thought, oh my God, this son of a gun is cooking. And maybe he's taking stuff out of my refrigerator. And I thought, this is really sick. So he'd come back to check on us and he'd say, if I hear anything, I'm going to come back and kill you. Well, time went on. It was just getting light outside, and I didn't know if he was still there, but I was able to get my blindfold down with my tongue, and I saw that my son was asleep next to me. And I said, Jeff, I'm sorry. I said, wake up. We've got to get out of here. We've got to go. We've got to go. So I untied partially my ankles, I guess, and partially his, and we hobbled down the hall. And I noticed that the kitchen, the living room door that goes out front was blocked with a chair. So we went around to the other side through the kitchen, through the sliding glass doors, all the way around to the front gate, opened it up, and I just screamed and screamed and screamed. And our neighbor across the street came over and took us over to her home. Um, my three male policemen came. And the last thing I wanted to do was talk to three male policemen after I had been just raped. Then my husband came and took my son. Um, then this very sweet police officer, Carol Daly, she's my angel, and she's still my friend today. After more than 40 years, she showed up, and she was so understanding and so kind and so patient with me. Um, and I was able to answer a lot of questions because of her presence. So she took me to the emergency room in Sacramento and stayed with me, I bet an hour. And you should see how I looked. Oh my goodness. I had a little bit of blood on my chest because he just scraped me with his large butcher knife. And then my hair was just all a mess and I had tears. I was such a hot mess, I'll tell you. So Carol stayed with me, but then she had to go because there were no cell phones at that time. So she had to go back to her vehicle and get whatever messages she had, but she had to leave. So finally, they didn't have anyone from the Rape Crisis Center at that time. I was taken in and seen by this male doctor. And one minute I sobbed and sobbed and sobbed, knowing, oh my God, I had just almost been killed. We had almost been killed. I had just been raped. and and then a few minutes later, I was like joyous. I'm alive. We're alive. We're okay. So I think the doctor thought I was bipolar, I'll tell you, because I was going from I'm serious, one mood to the other. So the exam wasn't fun. But then also, what wasn't fun was this huge shot of penicillin in my butt, which really hurt. And then I had to take morning after pills because, you know, I, I could have I could have gotten pregnant by this evil monster. So then, when I got home, my husband was already ordering an alarm system for our home, and they even had an alarm button behind my bed. So it was a horrible time. I hated my home. I hated being there, but my husband was in the military, and stationed over at McClellan. So we still had to the following summer before we were going to be transferred anywhere. So every night we'd sleep, all three of us, in this king size bed, um, just in fear that he was going to return, in fear. And every night it seemed like there was a helicopter overhead with a light flashing down around the community, looking for this guy. So we lived like that for a long time. And then my husband had to go TDY a few times, so I had a friend come over and stay with me, but I still didn't feel safe. And of course, no one in our community felt safe. No one. I mean, it was just a very terrifying time. As you said before, all the all the shops were just sold out of every type of safety device you could buy. But this guy, I don't know, he he could jump fences. I think he had either been in the military or he was a cop. That was my thoughts right away. Because one thing that he said to me after he raped me, he said, "Oh, you look so good in the O Club." And I went, anyone that's not in the military would not be using the word O Club. That's something that we say for officers club. So that really then thought, well, maybe I know him from the military. And that really scared me because I go away on the weekends down to Travis and I'm thinking maybe he's somebody in my unit. So anyway, then I think one of the other things that happened that was just a really frightening event was that following spring, I was out in the backyard tanning myself while my son was asleep. And I was laying on my back and I had the top of my bathing suit down so I could get some sun. And then I felt these pebbles on my back. And I thought, well, the wind's not blowing. Why are these pebbles on my back? And then I thought, oh, it's nothing. And then pretty soon there were more pebbles on my back. And I thought, oh my God, it's him. It's him. So I ran inside, of course, pulled my top up, ran inside, called the police. They were there in my house in just a few minutes. They they thought maybe he had jumped over my back fence, which was high. And I followed them and I jumped over my back fence as well. Cut my hand. I still have the scar today. Um, and then they brought me home, and then they finally found some old codger up there in the fruit orchard who just wanted some kicks and just wanted me to turn over or something and see my breast. I don't know, but it wasn't the East Area Rapist.
Mm.
That was so frightening. And for years, I mean, Jared, for years, I was always looking over my shoulder. And so many times in the beginning, I'd look at a man and I think, oh God, that's got to be him. I did go finally to the Rape Crisis Center about 6 months after my attack. And I should have gone a lot sooner because before that 6 months was up, I was a mess. I was just depressed. I was still going to school, which was good for me at Cal State, but I was just an emotional wreck. Once I got to the Rape Crisis Center, I met other women that had been sexually assaulted, and that really helped me because I realized, Jane, you're not going crazy. Everything that you've experienced, they've experienced. So that time, that really truly helped me. And then we were able to PCS or move forward the following year. But still, I never knew who he was, where I was going to come in contact with him. So anyway, that's my story and I'm sticking to it.
Uh, you know what? Even after reading your book, Jane, and getting to know you a little bit, just hearing that again, uh, first of all, I'm so sorry that you had to go through that. Um, it's nobody should ever experience anything like that. It's just to me, and I've said this on multiple times on this podcast, is that personally, I think rape, it's bad enough when you're an adult, but especially children when they're raped, I think that is more harmful to society because of the psychological damages, especially when children are raped by somebody that they know and they trust. I think the ripples in the pond, if you will, the reverberating effects of some, a heinous act like that, where you're so damaged, sometimes not even physically, but also psychologically and mentally, that I think it's worse than being murdered. And so I mean, just listening to you describing it and the pain that I hear in your voice when you talk about, the act itself was horrible enough, but then between him, ripping the sheets and banging
Mm,
the pots and pans,
mm.
and like you said, he he grabbed control of you immediately, so he knew exactly what he wanted to do. He knew exactly how to control the situation. The flashlight was probably to blind you so that he could overpower you, and then from there, tying you up and blinding you, and um, it's just, to me, it was just like it seems like it was just a sick game for him. And but I'll bet, it's kind of like the Zodiac killer. Reading about himself in the newspaper was just as much of a thrill, and knowing that he had done all those things to you, as well as terrorized you from that point forward. Um, I don't know. I'm sure there's people with more understanding of, psychological things like this, than I have. But
Speaking of remembering,
yeah,
2 weeks prior to my assault, we were robbed. Someone had come in the house, and this eventually it was him. Someone had come in through my son's bedroom window and taken all of my rings that I had that were special to me, very special. And when I came home from school that day from college, I asked my husband, "Did you take my rings and get them cleaned or something?" And he says, "No, why would I do something like that?" And I thought, "You're right, you wouldn't." But so I had the police come and the whole 9 yards, and they said, "Well, just be careful." Well, this was his MO, the Golden State Killer, because he would come in a couple of weeks ahead of time, and he did this in other homes, not just in mine, and he would get to know you. He
yeah,
took those rings for remembering who I am. He, of course, probably saw photos of me in the house, maybe in my military uniform. I don't know, but he got a lot of information about me just by coming in 2 weeks prior. So had I known that that was his MO, I would have been really on guard that this was his MO and he's going to come back in a couple of
yeah.
weeks and attack me. But I
Well,
also, what? I'm sorry.
you were the fifth victim.
Yes, I was. I was his fifth victim, but no one started knowing anything about the East Area Rapist until my assault. And then they go, "Oh my God, we have a serial rapist in the neighborhood." But I do want to comment on, it was the most horrific event of my life. And also having my 3-year-old, taken away from me. But, I have forgiven him. Uh, I have. I had to, because I was carrying this backpack of hate and anger and revenge for so long, and it was weighing me down. The other thing is, I look back and I think about all of the amazing folks like you that I have met in all of these years. And I wouldn't trade that for anything, because I have all my crime friends and just so many others that have reached out to me. So I really feel blessed as far as that's concerned.
Well, and I'm very, very glad to hear that. Of course, um, I would think that releasing that backpack, you said, and forgiving him, and moving on with your life. Number one, that takes away his power. So that's probably the last thing that he wants. But also, isn't that basically a requirement? For getting rid of anything that, well, I just know that anytime that I've been wronged, until I actually go through that process and forgive the person,
Right.
um, it doesn't mean you have to uh, associate with them or be around them anymore. But
Right.
uh, forgiving them and getting rid of that backpack, like you said, that just weighs you down so much. Until you do that, it's really, really difficult to even function in life, let alone be successful like you are.
Well, Jesus forgave us, and we have to forgive others. Then, at the end of my impact statement, when I was speaking to D'Angelo, the last thing I said is, D'Angelo, I'm a Christian, and one third of me wants you to know that I think I said, I forgive you or something. Now, I'm not sure exactly what I said, but one third of me, wishes you well or something, but three quarters of me wants you to go to hell. I did. So one third, okay, you got it. But the other three quarters, buddy, you go to hell. And yeah, I still feel that way. I do.
Well, you should. I mean, it's
Yeah,
yeah, just horrific. Now, once the four victims that were before you,
right.
was it similar? What happened to them?
I don't really know too much about it, but what I've read is that some of them had more traumatizing experiences that I did. I know a lot about the ones after me, of course, but I do know a few of them that I read. Their 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 experiences were not very pleasant. No.
Mm. Well, and it's actually fortunate that you were so early in his, career, if you want to say, but
Yeah.
his string of rapes, because like most of these serial rapists, they eventually the thrill isn't as much, and so they kind of get tired of it, so they
Right.
escalate. And uh,
Yeah.
when did he really start escalating and actually start murdering his victims?
Oh gosh, I really can't give you an exact time frame, but Carol Daly always said that he's going to escalate to murder. And thank God I wasn't one of his later victims, knowing that the Golden State Killer was in my house and I was going to be murdered because those folks knew about him
Yeah.
and how frightening that must have been. And I just, well, we call ourselves the sister survivors, but Debbie Domingo, she's a good friend of mine. Her mother and her mother's boyfriend were I think her mother was raped and they were brutally murdered by the Golden State Killer. Michelle Cruz White, her sister, her beautiful sister, was beaten to death and beaten beyond recognition and raped by the Golden State Killer. Beaten beyond recognition, this beautiful young girl. That was his last victim, his last rape victim. And then Margaret Wardlow, sweet friend too, sweet sister survivor, he raped Margaret when she was 13. So they're my sister survivors, and we all keep in touch and we all love each other. So, yeah, I'll tell you. But see, I have them in my life. I wouldn't have had them in my life prior. So last 40 some years have been, I should say, again, I always looked over my shoulder. I still do. I'm still careful. But yeah, he had us all in prison, not just me in prison. He had the whole community, states, different communities in
Yeah.
California, all in prison, not knowing when the next attack was going to occur. No one knew, and we didn't know if he was gonna come back.
We all have to remember this is so long. I mean, you were raped in 1976.
Yes, I was 30 years.
So, yeah, how many years ago was that?
Well, I'm 78 right now, so
Yeah.
I know it's a
Yeah, that
long
was
time ago.
almost 50 years ago. So,
No,
um,
times have changed.
yes. Well, but back then, it's important. I mean, you mentioned it based on, Carol Day, the
Carol
detective,
Daly, right.
that she didn't have a cell phone. So
Mhm.
back then, and I'm
Isn't
sure a lot of people listening to this right now, they're like, "What? Didn't have a cell phone? How,
I know.
how did you even survive?" It's like,
Exactly,
um,
exactly.
yeah, back then, yeah, the
You were
phone was
just a kid.
actually,
You were just born, Jared. I
yeah.
know, yeah.
Oh no, well, let's see. I was in 78. I was 11. So,
76. 76. You were
oh,
11.
76. So I was 9. So,
9. Oh my gosh, guy.
yeah. Well, um so yeah, if you're a millennial and you're listening to this, the phones used to actually be attached to the wall. Can you believe that? And you didn't have anything in your pocket that would actually communicate. And so when we wanted to call somebody, we literally had to go home or go to a payphone that was, a phone booth, and put a dime in it or something, and
Yeah.
then make the call and hope that somebody was home that could answer pick the phone up. Then they invented this thing called answering machines, which was a new revolution. That was fantastic. And, but, it's just things have changed so much today
They have.
that,
And one thing
uh,
that's really changed is the help that rape victims are now getting. They are certainly, they have folks now that go in with victims and stay with them during their exam. The
yeah,
rape crisis centers have really truly improved. My friend Chris Petretti, who I think she was raped in December after my assault, and she's out in California. She has just done such amazing things for rape victims. She has groups come over to her home. She has set up a safe room for victims to tell their story. Yeah, she is really such an advocate and just done so well. And I wanted to say one more thing about Chris. She was young, maybe 12, 13. Her parents told her after her assault she could not talk about it. So she kept this a secret for so many years. Can you imagine that?
um,
Oh my, yeah. Oh
yeah.
my.
See, and that's another thing that's changed is not just technology, but also just our methods and our understanding of
Right.
the trauma that victims go through, and so how to deal with that trauma has developed. It's just so much better now.
Thanks for joining us. Your attention today brings us one step closer to exposing and eliminating the evil that brings crime to our communities. Hit subscribe and share this episode. Together, we will bring justice to every victim.